Lilith's scream fractures silence, three truths buried in ash, two lie. She came to Tristram not as villain but midwife to a stolen birthright. Her womb will not be the architect of their sanctuary in salvation, heaven's always hers design. Nephilim weak, bound to war, the wanderer's arrow pierced her heart. The curse outlived the wound, asterisk I will not be the architect of their chains, asterisk yet the chains were hers to forge, always hers. Why does her name echo through sanctuaries bones whispered as both hymn and hex? The packed blade that split forged in the void between heaven's design, heaven's judgment, and hell's hunger. Mephisto's daughter, bound to Angiris' dream, wove a world to cage the eternal conflict. But the scepter of the second heaven demanded more than flesh, it demanded lineage. A womb to breed weapons, Nephilim born not to save, but to sustain a war neither side could wage alone. Her blood became the thread stitching heaven's hope to hell's gnash, each child a splinter in the cosmos, each death a spark, they called her mother. She was midwife to a prison, the heretic who handed her the scepter, not Angiris, not Mephisto, the shadow that lurks in every choice she never made. Who truly doomed her line to cradle the storm? The answer festers in every scar the Nephilim inherit. Lilith's womb held the first spark of a race that could unmake gods. She did not merely bear the Ediremsh wove them from starlight and hunger, children of her defiance. Angiris, the heretic archangel, met her in the void's hollow. Together they spun sanctuary from chaos, a cradle for their forbidden brood. But a mother's love is a blade turned inward. What child of divinity deserves such power? Lilith asked, what heart can hold both creation and annihilation? The Worldstone answered, forged with Angiris, it did not grant humanity yet asterisk became asterisk humanity. A cage of light soft enough to let the Nephilim fade, their strength siphoned, their legacy fractured, the Edirem forgot their name. They walked as mortals, fumbling in twilight, a god's wrath diluted to a man's rage, a celestial sorrow thinned to a widow's lament, Lily's gift. A world where her children would never burn the heavens down, never rise, never fall. Did she weep as sanctuary stars dimmed? Or dimmed smile, knowing her bloodline would never repeat the first war? The Worldstone's chains are silent. They bind not with iron but with asterisk choice asterisk, every Nephilim reaching, grasping, never quite touching the divinity that birthed them. A mother's greatest curse is to love her child too well, to fear their becoming, to trade eternity for a heartbeat. Lilith's name is a whisper in ruins. Her legacy, a people who fight wars they cannot win, who bleed for a power they cannot hold. The Worldstone still hums, the Edirem still sleep, in sanctuary. It cradles a salvation that was never meant to be, a curse that outlives all crowns. Lilith's womb held the first spark of a race that could unmake gods. She did not merely bear the Ediremsh wove them from starlight and hunger, children of her defiance. Angiris, the heretic archangel, met her in the void's hollow. Together they spun sanctuary from chaos, a cradle for their forbidden brood. But a mother's love is a blade turned inward. What child of divinity deserves such power? Lilith asked, what heart can hold both creation and annihilation? The Worldstone answered, forged in collaboration with Angiris, it did not grant humanity yet asterisk became asterisk humanity. A cage of light soft enough to let the Nephilim fade, their strength siphoned, their legacy fractured, the Edirem forgot their name. They walked as mortals, fumbling in twilight, a god's wrath diluted to a man's rage, a celestial sorrow thinned to a widow's lament, Lilith's gift. A world where her children would never burn the heavens down, never rise, never fall. Did she weep as sanctuary stars dimmed? Or did she smile, knowing her bloodline would never repeat the madness of the first war? The Worldstone's chains are silent. They bind not with iron but with asterisk choice asterisk, every Nephilim reaching, grasping, never quite touching the divinity that birthed them. A mother's greatest curse is to love her child too well, to fear their becoming, to trade eternity for a heartbeat. Lilith's name is a whisper in ruins. Her legacy, a people who fight wars they cannot win, who bleed for a power they cannot hold. The Worldstone still hums, the Edirem still sleep, in sanctuary. It cradles a salvation that was never meant to be, a curse that outlives all crowns. The pact was sealed in shadow and blood. Lilith's womb became a battleground where heaven's light and hell's rot fused. A child's cry split the void sanctuary's first breath. The scepter of the second heaven, meant to guard this fragile haven, cracked under the weight of its own lie. Heaven's tribunal roared, "Destroy the abomination. Erase the heresy." Tyrell's wings, cleaved from his spine in defiance, still whisper the price of mercy. His vote alone stayed the angels' blades. But Sanctuary lived only to suffer. Each Nephilim born carries the scepter's fracture. Their power wanes with every war. Their choices are never theirs. The Sin War's ashes still coat their skin. They rise again and again to die between the jaws of heaven and hell. Lilith knew. She wept as Angiris died, his soul bound to the Worldstone's prison. Her bloodline would never know peace. Sanctuary's salvation was a noose woven with the threads of a mother's betrayal. She fled not to create, but to escape. Yet her children remain pawns in a war that outlives kings. The scepter's shards still pulse beneath the soil. They hum a dirge for the Nephilim, for the angels who forgot how to love, for the demons who forgot how to hate. And the Worldstone, cold and hungry, waits. Dread is the only inheritance they pass, a cycle no sword can break, no prayer can mend. The mother of Sanctuary did not doom her children. She gave them the only home a cursed god and his fallen lover could conceive. A cradle of fire and ash, a womb of endless war. But to understand what came next, feel the cold void's breath razors on bare skin, the echo of Lilith's anguish as Angiris wove her into the womb's foundation. His voice, a blade of holy fire, seared her name into the cracks between dimensions. She did not weep, her blood had long since curdled to ash. Yet in that moment she knew this was no rebirth. The chains he called salvation were her own cursed spine, bent to hold the Worldstone's weight. What he gave her, a mother's worst horror, a child's power, siphoned to fuel a war she could not die to end. What price did Lilith's womb demand? The Edorim, her true children, were slain for defying the mortal cage. Their howls still cracked the Worldstone's fragile veil. Below, Sanctuary's hybrids blood thin, purpose thinnered in wars not their own. Angiris gift, a curse dressed as salvation, Nephilim power leached, leaving shells to mimic gods, and above. The unborn, never given chance to breathe, their potential smothered by a mother's bargain. Rathma, hungering for knowledge to mend a fractured legacy. Uldashin, his mercy warping to vengeance. Balcathos, faith shattered by the weight of a name that became a prison. Each bore the split divine and damned, forever unwhole. Their struggles etched cracks into heaven's certainty. How many prayers went unanswered, drowned in the wail of a mother's failed promise. Sanctuary's soil drinks deeper than blood. It drinks memory. Every battle there is an echo of Lilith's choice, to trade eternity for a world that would never know her name. The Edorim's ghosts still wander, not in peace but in hunger. They remember what mortals forgot, that Sanctuary is no refuge, it is a tomb, and Lilith. Her curse is to witness every fracture, every death, every soul ground between the gears of a war she could not stop. A mother's worst horror is not loss, it is becoming the reason for it. The void was no tomb, it was a womb of endless cold, where light bled like water and the weight of forgotten stars pressed into her bones. Lilith floated unmoored, her breath a ghost in the dark. Time did not pass it pooled, thick as tar, until her screams became hymns. Angiris had called it mercy. She returned to Sanctuary not as a queen, but a specter. The air reeked of iron and ash. The desecrated altar of Trion pulsed beneath her hand, its stone cracked, its magic a rot in the veins of the world. She had birthed this garden once, cradled its roots in her own blood. Now it was a festering thorn, her fingers dug into the earth. A rift split open, gold light seared her palms, the heat of 1,000 suns swallowed her. For a heartbeat she was whole, then the Wanderer's blade sang. The Nephilim would not inherit weakness. Lilith's plan was no rebellion, it was a reckoning. She had stolen heaven's fire, cursed it with her touch, and sown it in the soil of a world that would never know peace. The curse was not in the power, it was in the hope. Sanctuary would burn again and again, as her children fought for a sky that had already fallen. The Wanderer's steel found her ribs, blood bloomed over her armor, sweet and coppery. She laughed. Let them call her mother, let them call her monster. The curse was her cradle, the curse was her child. As the void claimed her once more, she whispered the names of those she had loved. Their war was not hers, their salvation never was. The garden would grow, the garden would rot. And Lilith's shadow would stretch over every root, every blade, every fall. Lilith is dead, her body shattered by the Wanderer's blade lies still. The curse, though, thrives. In the Nephilim's blood, in Sanctuary's bones, in wars that refuse to end. Her womb, intended as mercy, became the font of all suffering. A bargain to birth life, a price to poison it. Sanctuary's garden, her final act, blooms on fragile, fighting, forever fracturing. The Nephilim, heirs to her heresy, carry the weakness as much as the might. Their power is a wound, their hope a borrowed breath, no paradise, no absolution. Only the weight of her shadow, the silence of her grave. She is not forgotten, she is unmade. And yet her name hums in every clash of steel, every whispered prayer for deliverance. The mother's curse was never to die. It was to outlive all she touched, a mother's price, paid in the blood of the born, the broken, the forever burdened. Her shadow still stretches, always stretching. Her shadow still stretches, always stretching. In the blackened halls of hell's third circle, Angiris breathes sulfur. Chains of iron clang as Mephisto's laughter reverberates, a sound like bone grinding. The air here reeks of burnt flesh, yet he remembers the scent of Lilith's hair jasmine and ash. His mouth is cracked, his tongue thick with blood. He has not spoken in centuries. Words are a luxury hell strips first. Across the void, in Kajarena's hollowed ruins, Lilith kneels. Her hands glow with stolen light, the ritual's energy crackling like static on her skin. The ground hums beneath her, a living thing. She tastes copper, her own blood drawn to power the right. Let them be whole, she whispers. The wind carries her plea, sharp as a blade. She knows the cost. She felt it when Angiris was torn from her. How the Nephilim's fate is a noose, not a gift, a flicker, a choice. Angiris in his cage hears her name, not in words but in the ache between stars. He wonders, does she know the power she unchains? That to restore is to unmake. Lilith's eyes close. Her curse is not the womb but the knowledge. Sanctuary's salvation is its curse. The Nephilim will rise twisted, torn, unfree. The sky splits, light and shadow collide. Angiris screams. Lilith falls. The world, born of their love, begins to bleed. The price of her defiance was etched in the blood of every Nephilim. Their power, siphoned to bind the rift, became both shield and shackle. Light and shadow fed on their essence, twisting souls into weapons, hope into a slow-burning pyre. What mercy lingered in Lilith's choice? A world where her children would spend their breath, fighting the very forces their birth had fused. The Horadrim named her mother of the Soul Stone, blind to the altar she had become. Each Nephilim's death cracked the sky wider, each victory birthed new demons. The hollowed, those devoured by the struggle, were her unspoken epitaph. A queen who traded kingship for a cage of angels and devilshire wombed the fulcrum of an unending war. Sanctuary's salvation was her curse made flesh. The Horadric order would spend millennia misunderstanding their own foundation, that the Soul Stone was not a tool but a womb, that every Nephilim's cry echoed Lilith's fall. That the rift could not be sealed, only balanced, a balance maintained by the same hands it corrupted. The eternal conflict is not a battle of good and evil, it is a marriage of necessity. And Lilith, the heretic who loved too much, remains its eternal midwife, her name whispered in the static between stars, her curse the only inheritance her children know. The light that saved you was a noose, the dark that haunted you was a cradle, and I am the mother who gave you both. Fragment Soulstone Archive. What if Sanctuary's salvation was a pyre, not a promise? Anu and Tathemit's war forged her Wamba crucible for storms. Did the first breath of Nephilim kindling hope or a slow fuse? The eternal conflict's shadows hunger still. What